Welcome back to another episode of the program. Today we are going to talk about Ice Age human footprints discovered in the Utah desert, more specifically the Great Salt Lake Desert. And also we're going to look at pretty briefly another pair of footprints, more than a pair, in White Sands National Park, which was discovered by the same guy, I think about a year earlier, last September, I think, was White Sands. And I think it's very interesting because, if you guys have been following the channel, I always talk about how old the first human settlements and the peopling of North America and the South America, like Monteverde, the Cerruti Mastodon site, which goes back over 100,000 years in San Diego, Blackwater Draw, and among other sites. And this is interesting because more and more stuff like this comes out. I think there was an article that I did 2.5 years ago or something like that. Again, with scientists finding these ancient footprints in Canada on Calvert Island. And again, same thing. There are families, predominantly children with a few adults. You could see clearly in the footprints that children running around and playing. If you have kids, you know that that's the number one thing kids do is they frolic and run around. And mixed with a more adult footprints that have luckily been trapped and encased in the sand for thousands and thousands of years. And the fact that there are human footprints like this, as well as other archaeological sites in the vicinity that we're going to talk about, is amazing. And a lot of the evidence is out there. It's just been obscured by these layers and layers of new sediment that serves to encase and preserve these footprints, which is amazing stuff. So let's talk about the one in Utah first. And the article opens with human footprints believed to date from the end of the last ice age have been discovered on the salt flats of the Air Force's Utah Testing and Training Range by Cornell researcher Thomas Urban. Now, Thomas Urban has a lot of experience in dealing with footprints. As I said earlier, he found and analyzed the ones in White Sands National Park in New Mexico. And let's just pull up the map here real quick. So this is Salt Lake City over here, and about 80 to 100 miles west is this Salt Lake Desert over here, the Great Salt Lake Desert. And you can see it's just it's actually amazing. If you drive through the 80, you can get a cool look at it. I'm sure there's a few videos on YouTube of people driving in the area, but it's incredible stuff. And he apparently just found this by chance. Urban and Darren Duke of Far Western Anthropological Research Group were driving to an archaeological hearth site. This is what I mentioned earlier. There's a site within walking distance of where he spotted these ghost tracks, which are tracks that appear suddenly for a short time when moisture conditions are right and then disappear again. Stopping to look, Urban immediately identified what to him was a familiar site: unshod human footprints similar to those he investigated while at White Sands National Park, the earliest known human footprints in the Americas, which date back about 23,000 years, the ones in New Mexico. And again, that's a little bit beyond the last glacial maximum, which is about 19,000 BC. So it's, again, throwing the monkey wrench in the timeline of the peopling of the Americas. Again, disproving Clovis first, which puts the first humans peopling America back like 12,000 years, I think, if that. So yeah, this is almost doubling the time. And this isn't even mentioning Monteverde or the Cerruti Mastodon site, which I mentioned the Mastodon site a lot because it's over 100,000 years old, and the dates are so far back that in terms of mainstream archaeology, it's hard to place it in the timeline. So it's there, it exists, there's documentation, and people accept it, but it doesn't really fit into the narrative yet. So it's kind of in the back pocket of researchers and archaeologists and such. But it's very important that I mention it here because, not a lot of people know about it. The researchers returned to the site the next day and began documenting the prints using ground-penetrating radar survey on one of the two visible trackways. So he kind of fleshed out these methods from his previous work, and he uses radar imaging to image footprints at White Sands. He did that here as well. So he kind of knew what he was looking for, and so that's why he was able to quickly identify what was there. As was the case at White Sands, the visible ghost tracks were just part of the story. We detected many more invisible prints by radar. So where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So he found, I think, up to 88 footprints. Yeah, 88 footprints were documented, including both adults and children, offering insight into family life in the time of the Pleistocene. So the Pleistocene, if you guys don't know, is the name we give to that epoch between 2.6 million years ago to about the end of the Younger Dryas, so about 12,600 years ago or so. And during that time, there was a lot of huge mammals and huge animals living, especially in North America, giant megafauna living with humans. And they found those tracks as well, contemporaneous with these human tracks. So again, you get a nice snapshot of what life was like back then. Based on observations of several prints, we found evidence of adults with children from about 5 to 12 years of age that were leaving bare footprints. People appear to have been walking in shallow water, which makes sense at the time before, the entire Salt Lake dried up. The sand rapidly infilling the print behind them, much as you might experience while on a beach. But under the sand was a layer of mud that kept the print intact after infilling. Since there haven't been any wetland conditions in at least 10,000 years that could have produced such footprint trails in this remote area, Duke said the prints are likely more than 12,000 years old, which is interesting. He gives a date which is a lot more recent than the White Sands site, but again, it's very interesting. Another thing to point out is, if you guys have seen the site near the Snake River Valley and where the Snake River branches off from the Columbia River, there were people from Japan that were found in Idaho, and Idaho is just one state away from this site. That's an interesting thing to keep in mind, that this area is not a completely remote area. There are all kinds of sites around this general vicinity that also has markers of early North Americans. Additional research is ongoing. We found so much more than we bargained for. Blah, blah, blah. Urban was working at the request of Duke, who had previously found 2 open-air hearths, which is what they were initially looking for. Again, hearths, they're fire, so there's evidence of fire. So again, there's probably some sort of organized human activity going on. At one of these sites, Duke found the earliest evidence of human tobacco use. So they were smoking tobacco. I did another article about marijuana or cannabis, early cannabis use in I think it was Northern California, which I think the dates were about like 1200 BC or something like that. So they weren't that, they were about 3,000 or so years old, but still human tobacco going back over 10,000 years ago. That's interesting in and of itself. These hearths were about a half mile from the newly discovered footprints. So again, within walking distance. The site has broader significance. We have long wondered whether other sites like White Sands were out there and whether ground-penetrating radar would be effective for imaging footprints at locations other than White Sands, since it was a very novel application of the technology. So I love articles like this. I love news like this because they're not only are they finding new stuff, but they're refining their technique and therefore cutting down the time and effort to process but to analyze satisfactorily these sites and to really get affix some of these dates on there, just so we don't have to wait 2, 3, 4 years for more concrete answers on as to not only the dates and the origins of the sites, but everything around it as well, and the historical context of these sites. While the Utah site is not as old and may not be as extensive as White Sands, Urban said there may be much more to be found. Of course, there's always much more to be found. And then this is the White Sands site here. This is Thomas Urban himself right here conducting a magnetometer survey of mammoth footprints at White Sands. So the footprints at White Sands National Park provide the earliest unequivocal evidence of human activity in the Americas and offer insight into life over 23,000 years ago. They were formed in soft mud on the margins of a shallow lake that now forms part of the alkali flat, a large playa at White Sands. So, yeah, when there's marshlands and stuff that are ancient, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 years old, and now they're a desert, it doesn't mean that those foot or whatever it is that imprinted itself into those previous marshlands just get erased. So that's what they're trying to do in the Sahara Desert now is they're trying to find certain things under the layers, the surface layers of the desert, because it's been pretty much confirmed that the Sahara Desert is very recent and it used to be lush jungle at the time, and they're kind of slowly but surely they're examining the space, and discoveries like this in North America go a long way toward discoveries in other areas, even in other continents as well, because of these techniques and stuff that they're finding and proving useful in analysis of stuff like footprints. Researchers from the USGS dated these tracks using radiocarbon dating of seed layers above and below the footprint horizons. The dates range in age and confirm human presence over at least 2 millennia, with the oldest tracks dating from around 23,000 years ago, which corresponds to the height of the last glacial cycle, making them the oldest known human footprints in the Americas. In order to investigate the site, the team pioneered non-invasive geophysical techniques, again led by Thomas Urban. Here's a good shot of the footprints right here. Wow, that's fascinating. That is incredible. Detection and imaging with non-destructive technology has greatly expanded our capacity to study these remarkable footprints in their broader context. We now have a unique window into life during the Pleistocene, and this new study provides the first unequivocal evidence of a sustained human presence in the Americas thousands of years earlier. And that's a key word, sustained. So these people weren't just passing through. There were sites that people were they were living here long term. So that again revises a lot of the old theories that people were just hugging the coast and going down all the way to Tierra del Fuego and then coming back up and repeopling everything. That is pretty much not the case here, because they're finding now that people, I mean, there were people going down the coast, no doubt about that, but there were people branching off. And I mentioned the Idaho Columbia River video, and in that article, they were talking about how the people branched from the coastline and they went inland using the Columbia River to go way inland to North America, and some of them reaching the Snake River Valley in Idaho. Animal tracks, mammoth, giant ground sloth, direwolves, and birds are all present as well. We can see the coexistence between humans and animals on the site as a whole, and by being able to accurately date these footprints, we're building a greater picture of the landscape. Like I said before, there's a lot of historical context being filled in here. Human footprints provide unequivocal evidence of presence and also of behavior. It was previously thought humans entered America closer to 16,000 years ago after the melting of the ice sheets, which opened migration routes. However, the footprints show a much earlier migration of humans into the Americas. So what do you guys make of all this? Do you think people still came in through the top? Let me zoom out here. Do you think people still came in, even though there were a huge ice sheet here, do you think people still somehow managed to make it past here? Or do you think people literally just went across the North Pacific? Or do you think they came up from the south here, as a lot of people believe happened? Because I've mentioned this many times before, the people in the Andes and deep in the Amazon basin, a lot of those uncontacted tribes have that Denisovan DNA marker, that Melanesian marker from the Western Pacific here. Or let me know what you guys think happened with these, where these people came from, especially from the site in White Sands. If you guys have been to White Sands, even better, let me know what you guys think, or the Great Salt Lake Desert. And that about does it. Thanks for dropping in, and I'll see you guys later.